Oh my God.
So we're ready to begin?
Do they hear me? No, not yet.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Global Justice Center's Monday program. Today, we're very happy to have a program on the Mexico Solidarity Project, which is very important for all of us. And we have Bruce Hobson and Meizhu Liu, who are going to are founders and and activists in this project who are going to explain the importance and how they work. So I'm just welcome, Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. And thanks to the Center for Global Justice. It's great to be here. Let's see, can I just move that away? Yeah. And good that we got a good crowd, a good virtual crowd. Yeah. So for people who don't know, I am Bruce Hobson, and here with my compañera de trabajo, camarada, Meizhu Liu. I am a resident of Mexico, have been in Mexico for decades of my life, have worked here, married here, and I now live in the city of Guanajuato. Previously, I was a worker, I was a factory worker, and I was a carpenter in Southern California for a number of years, and I was engaged in activism and supported undocumented immigrants. And some of the people who I see on the screen there are people who I've known for a very long time. It's great to see you all. We're going to be talking, Meizhu and I are going to be talking about the Mexico Solidarity Project, but not just about the project, but about what is going on in the United States today with the threats against Mexico. So, Meizhu, do you want to give just a brief about you?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hello, friends. I'm Meizhu Liu, and I'm a lifelong socialist. And of course, socialists are internationalists. So that's enough said about how I got involved with the Mexico Project. But this moment in our own history reminds me of something from my family history. My mother was in China when Japan invaded it in 1937. She was a student, and students were always being suspected of radical activities. So the whole entire universities had to leave Beijing and go to other places. My mother was able to make her way to the United States. In 1942, when Pearl Harbor was bombed, she was sitting in a library and a bunch of people came rampaging through and they stopped at her table. And luckily, someone asked her, "Are you Japanese?" And she said, "No, thank God for that." I'm not sure what would have happened if she had been Japanese. They probably didn't realize that she was as anti-Japanese, or maybe more so than they had, because of the invasion of China by Japan that she had experienced earlier. But it reminds me of today and what happened to the Japanese Americans, their incarceration, the seizing of their property, the brutality with which they were treated in the concentration camps reminds me of the xenophobia that we're experiencing today with migrants in general, but particularly with Mexican immigrants and citizens of the U.S. So I'll stop there. Thank you all for coming.
Great.
Bruce is going to do most of this since I'm virtual.
I would like to, from the outset, plug a couple of events that the Center for Global Justice is doing, and another one that is being supported by the Center for Global Justice. The first one is actually in just a couple of days, on October 22nd, right, Liz? And it's on a film called The Freedom of Fierro. Fierro means iron, and it is also the last name of a person named Cesar Fierro, a man who spent 40 years in a U.S. prison for a crime that he did not commit, and then was deported to Mexico upon his release. Anyway, you can get information about it on the Center for Global Justice site. The other is a presentation on November 3rd, with the writer and lecturer Jack Belden, a person who I don't know, but I understand lives here in San Miguel. His talk is titled How the West, well, it's based on a book that he wrote that is called How the West Was Stolen, the US-Mexican War of 1846-1848. And I am particularly interested to hear Jack Belden's presentation because it just brings immediately to mind an article that I'm going to encourage people to look up, and we can put it up for people to see, not today, but at another time. An article by Bill Gallegos entitled The Historical and Political Significance of the U.S. Annexation of Mexico's Northern Territories, which I believe sets the stage for Meizhu's and my presentation today. So to start, let me just throw out a couple of questions from the theme of our presentation and see if we can get some people talking. What do we as socialists and the Mexico Solidarity Project consider Mexico so important with respect to a vision of socialism, we as socialists, and multiracial democracy in the USA? Or should we? And another question is that I think is really probably more immediately to the point is, why do you think that much of the US left is ignorant about what's going on in Mexico? So those are a couple of things that I wanted to just start with, to be maybe a little provocative. And so if anybody wants to, anybody out there would like to make any comment about that, and then we'll get right into it. Anybody? I know Henry, you and I were talking about that. And if not, then we can get right into it. I'm sorry?
Well, let me just start by saying myself that I never learned a thing about Mexico when I was in school growing up. I learned more about France and England, which are a lot farther away from the United States than Mexico. Just was a ignored country in the history that I learned in school.
Mm-hmm. So our view very fundamentally is that the US and Mexico are not just geographic neighbors, but are two historically connected peoples, working peoples. And the fact is that the Mexicano and Chicano peoples in the USA have had direct ties to the Southwest, which was northern territories of Mexico, and Mexico since before annexation. Really think about that. That is history that kids aren't taught in school. It's as if the Southwest, all of the Southwest, was always part of the United States. That magically the United States was just created or discovered. And we consider that bullshit and a lie. So what is the Mexico Solidarity Project? This is a project that was initiated originally by an organization that I and Meizhu are members of called Liberation Road. It's a US socialist organization. And in 2019, we did a presentation before members of our organization and asked the question, what is it that we should be doing? What is it that the US left should be doing with regard to Mexico? And we suggested beginning a project. And we didn't have that defined exactly what that would be, but we believe that at least we should be doing something in a big way to present information about and analysis about what's been going on since the watershed event of 2018, when Andrés Manuel López Obrador was elected. What did that mean, actually? And why is it that in the United States, actually much of the left doesn't recognize how critically important that is to ourselves, and not just for socialists, but for progressives everywhere. From the beginning of our project, Liberation Road never intended it to be our project, not something that we owned. It was to be, as in our view, a project that would welcome and bring in other left and progressive forces, organizations, and very quickly, groups such as Labor Notes, Code Pink, DSA, the Mexico Solidarity Forum in the UK, the CPUSA. Numbers of people said, yes, I want to participate in this. And very recently, I should mention that we're developing a friendship with Australia's Socialist Green Left, a really remarkable organization that's been around for quite a long time. So I mentioned the election of Andrés Manuel. Our project is absolutely supportive of Morena, but not uncritically. We believe that Morena has done tremendous things, made great advances, put forward social programs that have really changed the reality for millions of poor and working people in Mexico. We also believe that Morena has certain blind spots, and we're very critical about Mexico's labor department not paying attention to, or really considering not so important, the growth of independent labor organizing. We don't agree with that. And in fact, as a project, we have built relations with independent labor organizers in different parts of Mexico. And this began actually when we met people, fired workers from the GM Silao plant in Silao, just 20 minutes from where I live in Guanajuato, and found that there was tremendous struggle in the growth. They built it actually in their own workers' organization called Generando Movimiento. Generando, G, Movimiento, M. And that organization was, or that group, this independent group of workers, was targeted by management at this massive plant and by the Charro umbrella union of the CTM, the Confederación de Trabajadores de México. There was an election in 2022, February of 2022, in which the workers at the GM plant voted out the CTM and elected their own union called Cintia, Sindicato Independiente Nacional de Trabajadoras y Trabajadores de la Industria Automotriz. This was a remarkable thing to happen. And they still exist. They have, with workers, have created their own worker center in Silao that a number of us, Liz, you were there, that we visited back in March. A number of the people here on screen did. Meizhu, would you like to step in and talk about our committees?
Sorry, I was muted.
No, I was just going to suggest that maybe you could just describe the three committees that of the Mexico Solidarity Project.
Well, sure. I mean, I think that when we started the project, because of what we said at the very beginning, that people in general in the United States are very ignorant of what's going on in Mexico. And if they do hear anything at all, they hear it from the corporatist press of the United States, which often gives a very slanted at best view of what's going on in Mexico, and at worst, outright lies. And so our first goal was to bring real, solid, factual information to the English-speaking public within the United States. So we were going to do that through tours. And our first tour was with Javier Bravo. He's a Morena activist who lives in Guanajuato as well. And so he did a quite successful tour of various cities in the United States. And then we had another tour that was set up in 2019. 2 weeks before the tour was supposed to start, COVID hit. So we had to cancel it on a dime. Well, one of the people that was involved with our project, Sam, who was an NEA, produced the NEA newsletter for many, many years, he suggested that instead of a tour, we should do a bulletin. I often say about Sam that he's kind of like, a carpenter. Everything that you see is a nail. Well, he's like every organizing project that he sees, it's a newsletter. So that's how the bulletin got started. And Courtney Childs is here. He's been one of the mainstays of that committee. Welcome, Courtney. I think the idea with the bulletin, though, is that it has to be consistent. The thing that Sam said that really struck us is that when he first suggested it, we thought, well, okay, we can do this every month or so. He said, no, it's got to be every week. He said, it's got to be kind of like, you have a trusted friend who's going to drop over for coffee every week, and they're going to come, and they're only going to stay for half an hour. So it's something that you look forward to. That was kind of our aim in the way that we thought about the bulletin. The other thing about the bulletin is that it brings you voices directly of people who are activists. So you are hearing not only ideas and not filtered through me and Bruce or anybody else, but directly from the people themselves. And we feel like this is the kind of testimony that people need to hear in the United States. So that it is honest information. And that's why, as Bruce says, most of the people that we interview, because most of the people of Mexico are happy with what's happening in Mexico today, that's the bulk of the people that we talk with. However, there are definitely people who are critical of Morena, critical of the government, whether they be feminists or Palestinian activists who don't think that the government has done enough, fast enough, and so on. So those are voices that you will hear without any editing on our part. And I think that for me, what's important too, just from a feminist point of view, is that we're not just talking ideas, we're talking feelings. I mean, we are all in this fight because we feel strongly about things and because we love the people. Those are the kinds of emotions that we want you to feel from the people that we interview. So that's the bulletin. I don't know. I mean, actually, Courtney, I don't know if you would like to add anything there, or Bruce.
Well, our media committee
So
began.
that's a different committee.
I'm sorry, my hearing is not so good over here where I am.
Oh, okay. No, I was just saying that I was just finishing up with the bulletin committee. So now you're moving into the media committee. And before you start, let me just say that because we are an all volunteer organization, we don't have money. We're not a 501c3 and don't intend to be. Then that way the MSP has sort of grown organically. When people have had a good idea, they jump in and they start something. And that's true of the media committee. I think that many people in looking at the bulletin said, it's fine to hear these voices, but we're not informing people about what's going on currently in Mexico today. So we need another vehicle for that. And that's where some of our friends in Mexico City, Jose Luis, Ganado Sejo, Pedro Gellert, Kurt Hackbarth, and others formed the media committee. And out of that, the website developed. So maybe Bruce, if you want to take it from there.
Well, the idea was to challenge the lies and the distortions coming out of U.S. mainstream media since before AMLO's election, and from, of course, mainstream press of the oligarchy in Mexico. All of the press, all of the press in Mexico is owned by wealthy interests, except for one newspaper, and that's La Jornada, which will publish the truth about what's going on in Mexico. And we also, I joined that committee early on. We were also looking at the problem of the ignorance and also the virtual rejection of Mexico, what was going on in Mexico from the time of the 2018 election, and actually coverage of Mexico is from the US left media, and I include the US socialist left, often has been terrible, wrong. NACLA, for one, which has been a go-to source of information about struggles in Latin America for decades, actually has had some very poor reporting on Mexico. The Nation, unfortunately, also has had some very poor coverage. Two good friends, Bill Gallegos and Bill Fletcher, are now on their editorial board and have been pushing for a greater coverage of Latino, Chicano, Mexicano struggles and what's going on in Mexico, and to a certain degree have been successful. But it's just kind of the nature of some of the U.S. left press. Others in these times is generally excellent, and occasionally just will put out what they hear from mainstream or whatever. People are probably familiar with the Mexico's News Daily. Very recently, a woman who works with them, her name is Irene Wang, maybe you know her, Liz. NACLA ran an article that she had done that was just absolutely terrible. Our media committee just went after that, and I actually didn't hear, Meizhu, because from where I was sitting before, I didn't hear if you had mentioned soberanía.
No.
Well, two names that you did mention are Jose Luis Granados Ceja. He and Kurt Hackbarth, a writer for Jacobin magazine, they have had for over a year now a podcast that called Soberanía that is broadly listened to by progressives, mainly in the US. It's an English program that is lively, hard-hitting, very entertaining, and I would recommend that anybody look it up. And you'll find it on the English language site, mexicosolidarity.com. Those are the three committees that are part of what the MSP is about, the Mexico Solidarity Project, and have really largely made us into what we are. But I think that there is a hell of a lot more that we could be doing.
So Bruce, before you go on, we didn't really cover the Labor Committee that much. So maybe I can just say a couple words about that. And there are a couple people here that are part of that committee. Peter Olney, Tim Beatty, I see you both here. Les, yeah. So, and Jeffrey, again, we wanted to bring information, but that's not enough in terms of solidarity. We wanted to provide some direct support. And our opportunity again came really serendipitously. As Bruce said, we heard about the GM struggle in Silao, Guanajuato. And because Bruce and his friend Javier live so close by, they went to visit it and they established a connection with them. And that's really how the Labor Committee got started. We contacted other people. We contacted Labor Notes, and it turned out they were already involved in international auto worker struggles. And so we ended up forming a joint committee with them. And then other people have joined along the way to really build ties. But the idea was to build worker-to-worker connections, and we haven't really been very successful at that yet. It's still aspirational because we want rank and file workers in both countries to get to know each other and to support each other, not just the advocates or the people, kind of that already know what's going on. We want to bring the information down to the base. So some of the things we've done have been helpful. People have brought resolutions, for example, to support the workers at Cynthia to their executive boards and so on. And even if their unions don't agree or don't end up signing on, it's an opportunity for the people in the project to inform and raise those issues of international solidarity that are so needed within our labor movement right now in the US. We don't have that. There's still far too many people who believe with Trump that Mexican workers, for example, are the problem as opposed to the companies. I just wondered, does anybody else want to chime in here? Please
In the
feel
crowd,
free to, yeah, please feel free to jump in if you,
jump right in. Is that Agustin?
yeah. Well, why don't we just go on and finish and then we can field questions afterwards.
Sure. Let me, I'm sorry. Bill Gallegos, yeah, he's there. His hand is, Bill's hand is, oh, hey, Bill.
Oh,
Yeah, go for it. Liz was
I
just
think
saying, your hand
he
up.
needs to be unmuted by the host.
He needs it. Miguel. Está quitado el sonido para el.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Great.
We can hear you
Yes.
now.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for doing this. I really appreciate the Center for Global Justice taking the initiative to discuss this very important topic. I just want to say that we have a new committee that came out of the Guanajuato meeting to begin to create chapters of the Mexico Solidarity Project in a number of the cities where we've been doing work, held events. And so we've identified a number of places where we're doing in Colorado, in Boulder, Colorado, in San Diego, in Los Angeles, and in North Carolina, in Charlotte. So we're on our way to, beginning to create an infrastructure that would be at the one of the decisions in Guanajuato is that the local chapter should be very much connected to local struggles, and that in every single case, that's immigrant defense. So we're just beginning to set that up. We're going to be holding a webinar on how to create the chapters and working with the folks in those different communities. And I'm glad that our camarada Dennis Vigil is here from Colorado, and Betty Forrester, who's helping us to create the chapter in Los Angeles, and some other camaradas from San Diego. I'm not going to mention all the names because there's un chingo, but thank you so much for everybody.
Bill, you mentioned Denver, didn't you?
Yes, Dennis in Denver.
Good, okay.
Can I just add to that as well? Thanks to Diego Torres, who's here on the call. Diego, when we did our conference in Guanajuato, we also traveled to Mexico City, and Diego set up a meeting in the Chamber of Deputies, which was really a thrill for so many of the people that were there who never thought they would set foot within the Chamber of Deputies to meet with the deputies who live abroad. There are 5 of them and 1 senator. And since that time, he has really produced a lot of material and chances for people to speak on the situation of migrants who live within the United States and to really create more cross-border cooperation between the people that live in both countries. And just to say that through him, we organized visits of the diputadas to a number of cities. I think maybe 6 or 7 cities had visits from mostly Diputada Roselia Suarez, who's one of the strongest labor advocates among that group. And so that's been really fruitful. She has been just terrific. And Diego has too. I should mention Diego is one of the founders of our media team as well, and is responsible for the fact that we have a website at all for the Mexico Solidarity Media. So we thank Diego. Again,
Thank you,
there's so
Diego.
much. There's so much just volunteers that people have just jumped in and done stuff. And we're totally grateful, because we're just volunteers ourselves.
Yeah, the events that were held just very recently in the Bay Area, in Oakland, San Francisco, in Watsonville, California, which has its own remarkable history of of labor struggle going back, back to the 1980s, when
Charlotte.
1,000 women Mexicanas went on strike in the food industry, in the canneries. It was a major strike that lasted almost how long? 2 years, Bill? Peter? Yeah, just incredible. And then also, yeah, you mentioned North Carolina. Yeah.
And Virginia. I think we have Augustine's hand up. Go ahead, Augustine.
Okay. Yeah. Other thing, very concrete. I am here in San Diego, and we are supporting a truckers union, mostly Mexicans, who cross the border to deliver a lot of stuff from the companies like Hyundai and another companies who are in a struggle to really get a recognition of the union. Very hard for them because these guys come out with everything. The shadow unions, even the company support the shadow unions against them. They are in a very critical situation, and we are here in San Diego putting a committee with other union people, trying to support them the most we can. It's a very important struggle going on. The name of the union is Citravix. They refer to basically the name refer to they are the ones who move all the logistics for these companies, especially Hyundai. It's been a hard situation for them, but they willing to continue to fight. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Augustine. Anyone else out there? I think there's a sister from Texas. Anybody else have their hand up? That's Les?
So she
Yeah,
has.
Yeah, I was thinking on the whole question of why don't we know more about Mexico, and then I don't want to go into that in detail, but we sure don't. And I knew very little, except for some romantic things about Pancho Villa, and it was that kind of stuff, which was very remote and had nothing to do with what's going on right now. Learned a little more at the time of the of NAFTA, but still sort of mostly from the U.S. end. What's his name? I'm sorry, I'm old. I forget names. The presidential candidate, the rich, funny guy back in the 90s, about the great sucking sound of the jobs leaving the U.S. and going to Mexico. It wasn't until a decade later that I started learning. Well, no, not close to a decade later that I started learning more about what was happening on the Mexican side. But at any rate, when I moved, even when I first moved to Texas, I lived in Northeast Texas. All I knew was that there were more immigrants starting to come into Northeast Texas, mostly agricultural workers, some food processing workers in those god-awful chicken processing plants. But then I moved to Austin and got involved with a group that we have at this time friendly contacts with. It's 30 years old now. A group called Austin Tan Cerca de la Frontera, which took trips to just across the border in Piedras Negras and Ciudad Acuña, the solidarity relation with the Comité Fronteriza de Obreras, which worked with maquiladora workers throughout the border area. And a lot of it was a know your rights and let's read the Mexican labor law and learn what our rights are under the Mexican labor law, but also helping workers who wanted to organize unions. I now live in far northern Texas, almost in Oklahoma, and I don't have much contact with those folks anymore. But I'm thinking could we maybe use a more, could it be beneficial for all of us to have a more direct, more of a contact with them? I was also thinking, I know that the folks in San Diego have good relations with the Democratic Socialists folks there, and I am in DSA, and I have trouble interesting anybody in Mexican labor, you know. And as far as international stuff goes, right now, of course, there's such a concentration on Israel and Palestine, and well, I don't want to go on and on, but it's difficult, and people are interested in Ukraine and even somewhat in Venezuela because of what the Trump administration is doing. But it just seems difficult to get people more involved with Mexico. Although I think with DSA, it's going on more in California, and there is a DSA Mexico committee, which doesn't seem to be doing much with labor, but has a lot of contacts with Morena and the diputados. And I'm not sure how close our communications are on that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Les. Always good to hear you.
I think in terms of what Les is saying, I think that the way we feel is that if there was ever a time when the United States left needs to come together, it's now. And that position of like fighting for left unity, and it is a bit of a fight, is just an important task for all of us. For the Mexico Solidarity Project, that's why we have said anybody who agrees with us on the need to respect Mexico's sovereignty, on the need to build closer ties between the peoples of the two countries, they can and should join us. We don't really get into like, what do they think about Ukraine or what do they think about this or that? It's just Mexico, because if we opened it up to all of that, then we would be opening up cans of worms of differences between us all. But in this particular case, let's unite around Mexico.
Right. I mean, there's, I think, a really good example of how an organization had absolute focus, laser focus on their work, and that was CSPES. CSPES was created in 1980, the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador. And people in CSPES were asked, what's your position on this? What's your position on that? And they said, our position is that we stand with the people of El Salvador and are opposed to U.S. intervention and U.S. aggression against the peoples of El Salvador and anywhere else. Of course, at the same time, during the war in El Salvador, attacks against Nicaragua, and struggles, throughout Central America, Guatemala, Honduras. But CSPES was very, very clear that that was their mission. And it was a tremendous organization, national radical organization that the Reagan administration at one point declared it a terrorist organization. Big surprise. In the context of today, it could be that we will be declared something, and that we're going to be, we need to be prepared for that as we stand in defense of Mexico. Anybody
And
else?
therefore, yeah, Courtney's got his hand up.
Courtney. Hi, Courtney. From up in Oregon. I think you're turned off.
There he goes.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, thank you. Sorry, Meizhu, I tried to jump in, but we got a bunch of stuff going on at this house right now. So anyway, I'm finally getting on, and I just want to say that I'm an example of this left unity because I came from committees of correspondence for democracy and socialism to join this project, and I love this project so much. And so I love working with the little team that produces this newsletter. So my pitch is really everybody can participate. You know, you can recommend to us an interview. That would be lovely. You can, if you want to, you can participate on the production. If you want to learn how to back up what we're doing, then uh, please contact us. And anyway, thank you so much, Bruce and Meizhu, for doing this. Okay,
No,
thank you.
absolutely. And let me just say,
Thank you.
and then Henry here. Courtney is one of the 5 people in our team. Without him, we don't have a bulletin. I'll say that right now. Okay.
Overstated.
Thanks, Courtney.
Huh? Am I on? Oh,
Yes.
Get a camera.
confusing.
Okay.
In real life and pixels. I know you. I know. Bruce just talked about how we want to stay kind of laser focused on Mexico and not talk about Ukraine and all those other issues, is particularly the ones that divide the left so much. However, it looks like within a
Gives it better.
within the next few weeks, there's going to be a land invasion of Venezuela. And I just don't think, given the proximity of Venezuela and and I just wonder if anybody has any ideas of how this group might relate to that.
There's 2 things. One is that we have already published a piece that Jose Luis wrote for the bulletin, where he talks about how the threat to Venezuela also affects Mexico. You know, it really affects all of Latin America, that the target of Mexico could be next. He's just testing the waters right now, literally testing the waters. Secondly, we can do interviews with people in Mexico to get their views, as we do on Palestine. And so that's another way to hear directly from someone in Mexico, what are their views on that situation, but not as kind of as MSP taking an independent stand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Martin Eder.
I think you've got Martin Eder
Yes.
and
Martin.
Dennis. Martin, go ahead, and then
Martin,
Dennis.
adelante. Can you hear us? We can't hear you.
I think he's muted. I don't know if, how does he unmute?
Miguel, ¿lo puede corregir? ¿Sí? No. Martin, we don't hear you. And it seems
Maybe
to be at your end.
Okay, now,
Oh,
I
it
guess I was trying to unmute previously, but I guess only you all can unmute me. So I'm in San Diego, right here, 20 minutes from the border with Tijuana, where we have an extraordinary opportunity to do cross-border solidarity. But most importantly, what I wanted to speak to is the other part of acompañando al proceso de cambio en México, to accompany the social change in Mexico, is to work with the millions upon millions, 40 million plus Mexican Americans in this country, to learn from the social movements in Mexico, and particularly at this very poignant moment when Trump, started his campaign and has fueled his campaign with racism, particularly against Mexicanos and Mexicano immigrants, to work with them. And we started a local defense committee, the City Heights Defense Committee, where there's a high concentration of Latinos in one of the most diverse communities in all of the United States, and have built a grassroots organization among, I would say, probably 80% of our members are immigrant or come from an immigrant background. And we have really done a lot of things on the ground. And I think Mexico Solidarity should enter in any place through Mexico Solidarity to do work with immigrants and find a lot of the leaders, who are here, and a lot of people whose children understand they came through Mecha or other kinds of student organizing and are willing and able to join the movement against anti-authoritarianism. And I think a lot of what we're doing really jives well with our primary task, and that is to undermine the authoritarian consolidation that can prevent full-scale fascism from happening in this country. So I'll pass it back to you, and thank you for having put all of this together.
Thank you, Martin.
I think Dennis had his hand up too, Bruce. Can somebody unmute Dennis?
Dennis,
Can Miguel unmute him, or maybe unmute everybody and then they can?
can you?
He needs to raise the hand.
Dennis, raise your hand so they can see who you are.
Hmm? Yep.
Who is it?
Dennis Vigil.
You see Dennis?
Dennis, can you hear us? Okay, we don't.
Yeah. Next time we should trust people to unmute themselves. There you go. Hola, Dennis. ¿Cómo estás?
We should put the mute on the redhead that's running this country. I want to thank Diego Torres for being here. A lot of us thank you, Diego, for what you've done for the Broad Movement to bring people in the U.S. and Mexico together and to become more informed. Actually, you were very helpful in having a diputada by the name of Rufina Diaz come to Boulder. And there was an organization she spoke to. It's called El Centro Amistad. And there were about 60 Mexicano parents from the community in Boulder County. And she was wonderful. It was all so tan mexicanada. It was so good. Everyone just felt really glad that she was there. And they asked a lot of good questions, certainly about the consulate and the such. So thank you, Diego, for that. But I also want to refer to quickly what Bruce's original question is, which really interests me a lot as well. Which, why is the U.S. left ignorant about what's happening in Mexico? I know we'll talk about Mexico, but it's true with Latin America. I know I've spoken with several socialist, communist orgs and individuals, and they don't know what's going on. Even the DSA focuses on Cuba. There's limited focus on Mexico, much less what's Venezuela, much less what happened in Chile back in the 70s with Pinochet, supported by the U.S. imperialism, by the way. So I think that's a really important point, is we need to help our comrades from other organizations that are leftist. We need to bring to their attention their need to become more informed about the internationalism, not just nationalism. There's a lot of focus on this country, and Mexico is right next door to us. It's not like on the other side of the globe. The one thing I want to say also as an educator is I'm very clear from my experience and currently that the U.S. public education, and Meizhu, you mentioned that you didn't even know about Mexico when you were in high school. Well, that's kind of still going on, but I'm sure that they're going to talk about mariachis and Mazatlan and those. So we need to figure out how to get the educators more up to speed with what's happening, the oppressions that are happening. And I see it. And so while we're trying to recruit progressives into all our wonderful movements, the school system is indoctrinating whole slews of young people by omission, not telling them what, or commission, like you said earlier, Bruce, about the story of one half of Mexico being stolen by this country. So there's a lot to be said about that, and I really, and Meizhu's been helping me to get in tune with some of the trinationals, and I got to step up on that one as well. I thought I'd mention too, way back 1976, some of you are too young to know about this. One of the first books that got me really into thinking about politics was this book right here. Now, seemingly it's another book, but that was a start about voice, how we need to help people with their voices. And I don't mean just the leaders, I mean the people. And oftentimes they don't realize that they've got voice in a multi rainbow situation. So, so again, thank you, Meizhu, and for putting this together. It's always really exciting to get to share with good, wonderful comrades.
Thanks, Dennis.
Great. Liz?
I have a question. You mentioned your support of Morena, but could you give some, I understand it's critical support, but what are some of the main things that you find interesting about what Morena is trying to do?
Well, we get that question all the time. You know, are you allied with Morena? Or are you part of Morena? Are you members of Morena? Well, I mean, it may be that some people who support the Mexico Solidarity Project are members of Morena. Actually, one of the founders, Javier Bravo, in Guanajuato, my dear comrade and neighbor, he has been with Morena since before it became a party, which happened in 2014. He calls himself a Morena dissident, meaning he is absolutely supportive of Morena, but at the same time, he recognizes that there are issues and problems within the party. Take Guanajuato, for example. Guanajuato is run by the PAN, the right-wing conservative party. And some people in Morena really are not, as far as Javier is concerned, are not struggling enough to build a presence of Morena in our community in Guanajuato. That's one thing. I mentioned before about labor, about independent labor organizing. This is something where Morena has been asked by teachers, people in the auto union, by miners, what's going on? Why is it that we can't receive more recognition and support? Meizhu, you're with our labor committee. Is there anybody else with the labor committee here? Peter Olney is one. Peter, you want to make a comment there? Oh.
I understand. What I'm asking is, what are the positive things that you like about Morena?
Plenty. Yeah, my God. How long do we have? Yeah, okay. 13 million poor people have been brought out of poverty. What does that mean in a population of what, 130 million people in the whole country? 30 million people to be brought out of poverty. I mean, that sounds a little bit abstract. Does that mean, okay, you get to eat more?
Yes.
Which you do.
I think Bruce, Bruce, you know, when we started the project right after 2018, we were like, how did this 4-year-old party win? They're not a socialist party, but they definitely are on a path. And I think that what things we have to learn from them is, how do we talk about neoliberalism in a way that the ordinary people understand it? Because AMLO was able to encapsulate neoliberalism in one word, corruption. I mean, he said, how can you have a wealthy government and a poor people? That is so, that's so clear right there. So I think we have just so much to learn from Morena in terms of its electoral success. You know, like I said, even though it's not socialist, to be able to say and actually do for the good of all, but first of all, the poor, and with Claudia, and first of all, poor women. I mean, that is a remarkable achievement, and we have a lot to learn from that. I do think that DSA right now, in terms of sort of elements within them, considering whether to become a political party, have a lot to learn from the Morena experience. And that's part of the reason this is a grand experiment that's going on right here under our noses. And we have so much to learn from it. And it's another reason why we have to protect its sovereignty, its right to continue this transformation, this grand experiment into the future, and we will see what it can bring.
Right. Anybody else want to make comments addressing what Liz was asking about positive things in the history of Morena?
Agustin has got his hand.
Augustine's got his hand up.
There he goes.
Yeah. You know, I wanna say something as a Mexican who really lived the process. I moved back to Mexico to help in wherever I can in 2018. I started going more often, really build something over there. Anyway,
Is that at
Did
his
he?
end? It's frozen. Is that it?
I think he disappeared.
Oh, Agustin, te fuiste. Okay. Okay. Yeah. If you come back, then come on in. Is
Well,
anybody
while we're waiting for him too, I just wanted to give a shout out to Jimmy Centeno because culture is so important. In fact, I think we don't use it enough in this country in terms of changing the minds, especially of young people. You know, thank goodness for Bad Bunny, but we don't do enough of that. And Jimmy, as an artist, has brought some of that cross-border visual art analysis to our bulletin at times, but also in his own writing. So thanks, Jimmy.
Absolutely. You know, with respect to a couple of things that we're talking about, culture and internationalism. In Mexico, there is a long history of US progressives, revolutionaries who have had an involvement and made a real impact culturally, politically in Mexico. And just to name a few, John Reed, person who wrote Insurgent Mexico, and of course, 10 Days That Shook the World. He lived in northern Mexico, was with Pancho Villa. Other people, Elizabeth Catlett, African-American woman, remarkable artist, progressive woman. Harry Haywood, African-American revolutionary, Marxist, person who drafted the position of the Communist Party on the Black Nation. He lived in Mexico and worked directly with, had friends in the Mexican Communist Party. His son actually is a neighbor of mine in Guanajuato. Jumping around, B. Travin. Does anybody know who B. Travin is? Okay, many of us who have read his books. B. Travin was a revolutionary anarchist from the 1910s, 1920s, who came to Mexico, lived in the jungle of Chiapas, ultimately in Mexico City until he died in 1969, and wrote books that are considered classics in Mexico, in the pantheon of Mexican novels. Other people, M.N. Roy, an Indian, is the principal founder of the Mexican Communist Party. Tina Modotti, revolutionary, communist, photographer, lived in Mexico and was directly involved with the Mexican Communist Party. Cedric Belfrage, I mean, the list is long. Cedric was the one time the editor of the old Guardian in New York. He's a British citizen. During McCarthy, was deported to his home country, to Great Britain, came to Mexico, lived in Cuernavaca until he died, and he was Eduardo Galeano's personal translator for most of his books. Many people don't know that. And the last person I would mention is my dear friend, David Werner, who was a teacher of mine back in the 1960s, who has lived in Mexico for the last 60 years, working in the health fields. He's also well known for a number of books that he wrote, beginning with Donde no hay doctor, where there is no doctor. You probably know that book, Liz. No? Okay. So anyway, the list is very long. Culture and internationalism really are integral to building unity.
Well, I think that's what we've got. If anybody has any final questions.
Yep.
And just to say that in maybe beginning of December, we're going to have a call for all who are interested to really think through what is the Mexico Solidarity Project, what are its principles, what are its structure, because like I say, it has grown sort of organically, and we haven't stopped to really consider sort of its own internal democracy. How do we operate? What are our principles? You know, the question that Henry raised about do we take political positions and so on. Those are questions that we'd like to hash out with all of you, and you will hear from us later about that.
Yeah, we'd really like full participation in. Any other hands up here?
Looks like
Liz?
I think I see no more hands. If there are, please raise them. But
So
otherwise, let's thank Bruce and Meizhu for.
yeah, can I just also say, like, I don't know, in the chat, maybe Diego, you can put in your schedule for the next coming weeks. There's a number of tables that he has organized on different topics that relate to migrants in the U.S. and connections to Mexico. So if you could just stick that in the chat. I think most people know our websites, the mexicosolidarity.org, and is it mexicosolidarity.com? We have a couple of them. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any last remarks? Are we okay? Well, thank you.
No, it's just great to see everyone and have this discussion. I am very excited about where things are going with the Mexico Solidarity Project, particularly as Agustin and Martin and Bill have raised the building of Mexico Solidarity Project chapters in different parts of the country. This is something that really, I think, has tremendous potential. So thanks you all. And thank you, Liz, for making this possible. Miguel, muchas gracias. Hey, pues yo creo que ya, no? Okay, unless anybody else wants to make a final comment as well?
I think, Diego, we may need to just put your information on the Center for Global Justice website or note. Can you do that, Liz?
Meizhu didn't hear that.
No, I was saying that Diego hasn't had a chance to put in his information. If you could put it on your website or in your announcement about after this, Liz, is that possible?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, great.
Wonderful.
All right, good.
Let me just repeat again, the very first thing that I said in the beginning here, that I really recommend that on November 3rd, people tune in for Jack Belden's presentation on how the West was won.
Stolen.
Excuse me?
Stolen.
Jesus. Thank you, Liz.
What side are you on?
How the West was stolen, the U.S.-Mexican War of 1846, 1840. Yeah, on November 3rd. Tune in.
Thank you, everybody.
Gracias.